Let's go to Labor's primary vote in Victoria. We've got polling out today, Resolve polling. It has sunk Labor's poll numbers to their lowest levels in years. Labor's down 1.27%. This is in primary vote terms. That's a 12-point drop in support since the change from Daniel Andrews to Jacinta Allen about 10 months ago. Concerningly, though, Daniel, I have to say, there's not a concomitant increase for the Victorian Libs. We know when we're looking federally, when Labor has fallen, Peter Dutton and the Liberals have risen, not so much in Victoria. And of course, you know, they're walking away from Labor voters down here, but they're not walking towards John Pizzuto.
Well, that's right. The Coalition has to win Labor voters to form government. You would know better than anyone else that you've got to do two things. You've got to point out why this government is bad and why you would be better as government. Now, the Victorian government's doing a perfectly good job of doing that all by themselves on the first task, but the second task, they need to have a clear policy agenda as to why Victorians will be better off under a coalition government. I think there's four key areas they need to focus on. They need to start building more homes because we've got low approvals, record migration. They've got to fix the budget because debt is out of control. They've got to end the rorts on the big public projects, infrastructure projects, and they've got to cut the energy bills, so stop net zero, get the gas and coal back online. I think those are four very sensible policy areas that would appeal to most Victorians, but you know, for whatever reason so far, the Victorian Coalition hasn't been willing to put the fight out there and take on the government.
Yeah, some of those issues that we've talked about, there's not a cigarette paper between them and Labor.
Well, that's right, particularly on energy. And I just don't really understand this. There's been this idea that you've got to go further to the left of the Labor Party in order to win voters, but they're voting Green. You just saw the numbers there. The Green voters at a record high. You're not winning Green voters by trying to out-Green Labor. You need to talk to mainstream Victorians that have been left behind by this very bad government over the past 10 years.
Well, even Twinny Forrest has left the green dream behind. We'll get to that in a moment too. Hey, at Queensland too, no surprises up there. There's been $3.7 billion worth of goodies handed out to win voters over come October. It's not working though. The latest YouGov poll published by the Courier Mail shows the primary vote support for the Miles government plummeted to 26%. That's the lowest level of support for Labor in Queensland in 131 years. In two-party preferred terms, David Crisafulli's LNP is well clear of Labor, 57-43. But as I said, they're still going to take the CFMEU money because they're pretty desperate, Labor in Queensland, aren't they?
They are desperate, Peter. I mean, they've been handing out these goodies, you know, discounted public transport fares.
Discounted, it's 50 cents.
Exactly. It's basically non-existent.
Who even has it in the wallet anymore?
It's pretty much free now. You know, discounted car registration, you know, various incentives. And so people are seeing through this. And I think the Labor government's been in so long in power there, people are sick of them, and they seem to be, from what the polls are showing, they want change. And I also find with Stephen Miles, he's very polarising. A lot of people dislike him, the poll showed today. And just interestingly, the Courier Mail had a poll on who they prefer as Premier, and this evening it had 15,000 votes, and 87% were in favour of Crisafulli and 13% Stephen Miles.
Well, 15,000 is a big sample. That would be, well, that's damning for Labor. Well, let's go to Canberra if we can. The Greens there are shaking their economic fist, if they have an economic fist. I suppose that's a tautology. They want the government, if there is a rate increase next month, they want the government to step in and reverse it. That's a big deal, as you know, in terms of the independence of the Reserve Bank. They also say at the next election they want a super profits tax on corporate Australia. They're not going to support any cuts to the NDIS. They won't rein in the rorts, and they also want to significantly increase the dole.
Well, this is loony economics. And, you know, even just on the RBA, it's not a perfect institution, but you look back to when it was independent and could set its own rates, inflation has been very stable for a long period of time. And that is critical because if inflation's going up, down, left and right, and decisions are being made for political reasons, you can't have confidence in the future because every time a new government comes in, you're going to have a different economic rationale for changing rates, and that'll affect the entire economy. So their broader economic plan can't be taken seriously. But what worries me, and this is a test for Albanese and Labor, they're probably going to have to form government with the Greens. Does Albanese think this is a good idea? Does he believe in a super profits tax? Does he believe in the politicisation of the RBA? I don't know. He hasn't said much on the economic future of the country, so I'm going to be watching very closely how Albanese handles these ideas from the Greens.
Look, you're really right to make that point. A lot of people dismiss the Greens and they go, well, look, they're not a main party that'll ever form government, but they can be highly influential. We saw that with Gillard's deal in 2010. We saw where that hung parliament went over that period of time. And if you look at the polls now, consistently on trend, it could be the Greens holding the cards for the Albanese government to stay in power.
Well, that's right. And I think the Greens, mostly for worse, have been probably the most effective political force in Australia now for a number of years. This is not your grandmother's Greens. It's not the Greens of Bob Brown. And I have my disagreements with Bob Brown, but at least he's a genuine environmentalist who believed in doing the right thing by the environment. But this is very extreme on economic and social matters, and they're very different to what they were just a generation ago.